So do you want to make the tastiest and best cake possible? I'm going to show you step by step on how you can make the most unique cake and flavorful cake. I am going to explain how to make the perfect cake. I've been baking cakes for over 5 years. I'm going to show you about essential key tips on baking a great cake. Firstly, you're going to make sure your ingredients are ready, measured correctly, and at the right temperature. Secondly, you're not going to want to overmix the cake batter. And then thirdly, you must preheat the oven and then allow the cake to cool completely in the pan. The ingredients that will be needed are a box of cake mix, eggs, butter, milk, a 9 by 10-foot glass pan. And then, firstly, you're going to make sure your ingredients are ready, measured correctly, and in the right temperature. Before you start to bake your cake, you need to make sure you have all the right ingredients. You never want to be halfway done baking a cake and don't have any butter in your disposal. If the cakes for your recipe asks to preheat the oven or a specific type of brand of product, make sure you have the exact one they are asking. Following the recipe by a T is essential to making the best cake possible. Once you have all the ingredients out, take out all your measuring utensils and rinse them out. This will make sure they are clean and clear of dust. For each ingredient you use, make sure you measure each of them perfectly so you have the perfect amount. After you have measured all your ingredients, you will have to pay attention to the temperature each ingredient needs to be in. For example, you will need to make sure that your butter is at room temperature. If you forget to do this step, your butter will not mix well and will be lumpy instead of a good light and creamy texture. Another instance to stay aware of temperature is with your eggs. You want to make sure your eggs are room temperature. If they're not room temperature, they will not mix together completely, and this will make your cake lumpy. Secondly, you do not want to overmix your cake batter. For better results, use an electric cake mixer to perfectly mix your cake batter. According to Sally's Baking, for mixing batter with an electric mixer or using a whisk, make sure you're mixing the cake batter together, just until the ingredients are combined. Overmixing leads to a tough textured baked good because you're deflating all the air. Your recipe shall tell you how long to mix the cake batter. Make sure to put a kitchen timer on and use your electric mixer to mix the batter to the correct amount of time. If you end up overmixing the cake batter, it will end up to a faulty cake. According to the cake decorist, when cake batter is overmixed, it creates a dense and weak cake. The cake will be fragile as the protein structure was weakened by too much mixing. If you do not mix the cake enough, you will end up with mixed ingredients, and one part of cake can be too buttery while the other part tastes like nothing. Another result that can happen if you undermix the cake batter is that you will end up with air bubbles. These bubbles will appear after you cook the cake, and there will be big bubbles throughout the cake. After perfectly mixing your cake batter, you're ready to move on to baking your cake in the oven and letting it cool. So last tip is cool the cake completely. No matter if you're in a rush, it is essential to give the right amount of time after you take the cake out of the oven. On average, give the cake at least 2 to 3 hours before continuing with the icing. If you do not let your cake cool, it will stick to the pan and make it hard for you to take it out. This can end up ruining your cake and making a big mess. To cool for the best results, transport your cake onto a rack. This will allow your cake to cool a lot easier. And if you are in a rush and need to cool your cake faster, a great tip you could do is by placing your cake into the refrigerator. And if you need to finish cooling your cake in under 30 minutes, another thing you could do is remove the cake from the pan and onto a cookie sheet. And then you could place your cake into the freezer. Only allow up to 45 minutes of freezing to prevent a faulty cake. Eating and icing cakes are best at room temperature, and this will make your life a lot easier and end up with a tastier cake. After this long process, you are finally done and can enjoy your perfect and tasty cake. If you pay close attention to these tips of making sure you have the right ingredients, measure them correctly, and not overmixing the cake, allow your cake to cool, you will achieve the cake of your dreams. I know what you're thinking. Baking a cake is a lot harder than I thought, but don't worry. Once you follow these helpful tips, you will be at awe how perfect and tasty your cake turns out.